Good morning, everybody. It's a great pleasure to welcome you to this Eurostat's webinar. My name is Romina Brondino. I'm an Information and Communication Officer at Eurostat, and I will be the moderator for this session. Today, we will talk about the EU enlargement. This year is the 20th anniversary of the historic enlargement of the European Union. In 2004, 10 countries joined the EU. Today, there are another 10 enlargement countries. And with the help of our experts, we will learn more about Eurostat's role in the enlargement process and how Eurostat supports and cooperates with the enlargement countries in the statistical field. With this webinar, we also want to mark another important event, European Statistics Day 2024, which takes place on 20th October. This year, the day is celebrated under the motto, Official Statistics, a window for understanding society. And indeed, today, we will have the opportunity to understand more about Eurostat's cooperation and work with the enlargement countries and ask questions to our experts. For the questions, you are welcome to send them via slido.com. The Slido code is #293456 and you can also use the QR code. The link is also available on the Eurostat stream page. So you're welcome to send your questions anytime, and then when we move to the questions and answer session after the presentations, we will answer them. On Slido, you will also find a short survey so you can give us feedback on this webinar. The event will be recorded and we will make the recording available both on our Facebook page and on our website. So if you don't have time to stay, you can always access it afterwards. Now, let's meet our experts. It's a pleasure to welcome our first speaker, Claudia Juncker, who is Head of Unit for Statistical Cooperation, Enlargement, Neighbourhood and Development Cooperation. Claudia will give us an overview of Eurostat's statistical cooperation with the enlargement countries and of some political aspects of the enlargement process. Claudia, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Romina, and hello and a warm welcome also from my side. It's good to see that there's such a large interest in the subject, which of course is nowadays a very topical issue if you follow the media a bit, and that's why it is also very high on the agenda of the European Union and us, the European Commission. So I would like to maybe take you a bit back for historically, and we can put the map that we have to be sure we know what we are talking about today. So the European Union, or at that time it wasn't even called the European Union, but it was called the European Economic Community, was founded in 1952 with only 6 countries. And the founding countries, I'm sure you know, were 3 small countries, Belgium, Luxembourg, and Netherlands, and then 3 bigger countries, France, Germany, and Italy. And then in the beginning, every 20 years, and then later it was a bit faster, some new countries joined. In 1973, we had Denmark, Ireland, and the UK. Of course, the UK these days is out, but at that time it joined. Then we had Greece coming in, Spain and Portugal in 81 and 86. Then in 95, we had another 3 countries, Sweden, Finland, and Austria. And then we had what we call these days the Big Bang enlargement in 2004, with 10 countries joining. So in the north, Estonia, Lithuania, and Latvia, then going south, Poland, Czechia, and Slovakia, then Slovenia and Hungary, and in the very south, Malta and Cyprus. We also had 2 more enlargements. In 2007, Bulgaria and Romania joined, and in 2013, and that's the last one, historically, Croatia. And these are the countries that are marked in blue, of course, except the UK, because it left the European Union in 2020. So these are the countries marked in blue. And I think on this map, it also nicely illustrates the geographical extension of the European Union, because we are talking about countries in the Balkan that are striving to join the European Union. the darker yellow ones, which are Albania, Montenegro, Serbia, North Macedonia, and Bosnia and Herzegovina. There is a little dot, which is Kosovo, which is not yet a candidate country, but a potential candidate. And then we also have among the candidate countries Turkey, which is more to the east, and darkish yellow. And we have 3 countries that are both enlargement countries, but also belonging to the European Neighbourhood Policy East. And these are the lighter green ones, Moldova, the small, then Ukraine, the big one, and Georgia, even further east. Plus, further east, we also have Armenia, Azerbaijan, and then close to Poland, it's Belarus, countries covered by the European Neighbourhood Policy East, while, of course, cooperation with Belarus is suspended since the start of the Russian war against Ukraine. So this is just a geographical extension or enlargement of the European Union. Of course, there are other processes that go into deeper integration, but that's not the topic of our talk today. Now coming a bit to the process of what a country has to do when it wants to join the European Union and what all the countries except the founding countries have done. So the first step is that they have to apply for EU membership. I'm sure there is a discussion inside the country whether and when to do that, but that's the first step to explain or to express an interest to join the European Union. Afterwards, the European Commission has to draft or to assess the readiness of the country to start this process. And then the Council, which is the European Council, which is the heads of states of all the EU member states, they have to agree on that. And from that point onwards, the potential candidate becomes a candidate country, because then there is the start of a screening process, meaning that the countries will be made aware of all the EU legislation that exists and that they have to take over if they want to become a EU member state. And then they on their side have to report to the Commission and later through the Commission to the Council on how prepared they are. So how do they implement all this legislation? And then at some point, the negotiations will start on all the chapters, we call that chapters, more than 30, that all the EU legislation is divided into. And these days we also call about clusters, if you have heard about it. So certain chapters are put together because they present, for example, all chapters that are related to the rule of law and similar issues. So the negotiations take place to see how an applicant country, a candidate country, implements what we call the Copenhagen criteria, which were established back in '93. And the Copenhagen criteria are about whether the country is governed by rule of law, respects human rights and also minorities. That's the first criteria. The second criteria is whether it has a functioning market economy, so it can be part of the market economy in the European Union. It has the capacity to cope with competitive pressures and market forces in the EU. The third criteria is the ability to take on board all the legislation and to basically implement all the legislation existing in the European Union. We call that the EU acquis. And some years later, another criteria was also added to this process, and that's the criteria that the administrative structures, the governance of the country is ready to work in EU structures and to take on board all the European legislation. So that's the criteria. With the countries that are in dark yellow on this slide, we are at different stages of the negotiations, and the negotiations can take a long time. I think the current countries have applied sometimes more than 10 or even 15 years ago, and we are still negotiating with them. Now we will see how statistics gets involved into that political process, and for that I hand over to my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Claudia, for leading us into the topic. I have a more personal question for you. Actually, you have witnessed the previous enlargement round in 2004. In your experience, what is different today?
I think at 2004 it was there was a lot of enthusiasm in the 90s when the wall broke down, and those countries who always said that they belong to Europe got the possibility to join. Um, I think it was accompanied by a lot of enthusiasm and willingness, spirit. It was really, you could feel it in the air, if I may say so. I think we, the European Union, have learned a bit from those enlargements, and nowadays maybe it's a more administrative and more documented process than it was 20 years ago. That for me, I'm not saying this is wrong or right, but this is the difference for me.
Thank you. Thank you again for sharing this. And now let's move on to our second speaker, Shari Sterenberg. And Shari will explain to us why and how Eurostat supports the enlargement countries in the field of statistics. Over to you, Shari.
Thank you very much, Romina, and also a warm welcome from my side to our webinar. My name is Shari Sternberg, and I'm working in Eurostat's enlargement team. There, I'm country officer for Serbia, but within several cross-cutting activities, I'm also cooperating with all the other enlargement countries. So what I'm going to tell you today is why and how Eurostat supports the enlargement countries. So the role of Eurostat in the enlargement process is threefold. So first of all, we are assisting the countries to become compliant with the European requirements. So we are helping them to produce statistics which are aligned with the European requirements, standards, concepts, and definitions. But it's also important that they become compliant with the law in statistics and respecting all the concepts, guidelines we have. For example, national accounts should be compliant with the European system of national and regional accounts. The second pillar is that we are not only supporting the countries, we are also monitoring the progress in the area of statistics. Therefore, we have several instruments, but the most popular and publicly published instrument is the annual enlargement package report. This is a report from the European Commission, which monitors the state of play and the progress for each of the enlargement countries. And within this report, we have a chapter which is solely dedicated to statistics. And there we are assessing the progress which have been made from last year and the general level of preparedness in the area of statistics. This enlargement package report is normally published in November, so the 24 version is just around the corner. And within this report, the statistics, as I mentioned, has their own chapter, but it's also present in all the other chapters, because how do you monitor progress? Well, it's good to monitor just data. So this is also the third role of Eurostat. So we are providing key figures, key indicators for measuring the progress in implementing policies and reforms within the region. So how does Eurostat exactly support the countries? So we are mainly supporting them with regional cooperation programs. Why do we use regional cooperation programs? So countries from different regions often have the same challenges, and they can learn from each other with best practices. They can discuss the challenges, and it's good to have workshops together and do the programs together. But even if it's a regional cooperation program, the individual projects are very much tailored to the countries. But this I will tell you in more detail on the next slide. So the two main regions we currently have are the Western Balkans and Turkey, and Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine. Western Balkans and Turkey, we are supporting with the so-called Instrument for Pre-Accession Assistance, which is the mean by which the European Commission already supports these countries since 2007, with technical assistance and also financial assistance. Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine are not included in this program, but we have other supporting programs for them, either already in place or we are just preparing them. And they are either financed by the European Commission or by Eurostat itself. So how exactly do these programs look like? So what we are doing to support the countries? Well, the cornerstone of these projects, of these programs, are statistical projects in several statistical areas. So I think in the current EPA program, we have more than 20 projects, which are covering statistical areas in national accounts, transport statistics, social statistics, several environmental statistics. So yeah, it's a big variety of statistical projects. And within these projects, we have different elements how we are supporting the countries. For example, experts from member states or other external experts which are supporting the countries and the colleagues in the countries to produce statistics according to European requirements. Another element are study visits. So within study visits, a delegation of the enlargement country is going to another national statistical institute, either in a member state or in an EFTA country, and then they're discussing a certain statistical area, and they're learning from best practices and how the other country is producing the statistics, and they're having a lot of intensive discussions on these statistical areas. Another opportunity which we are providing within our support programs are traineeships. I think traineeships is the most common element which is on the slides, but just to give you a bit more detail. So within our traineeships, colleagues from the enlargement countries have the opportunity to go to another national statistical institute, for example, in the member states, in the EFTA countries, or also at Eurostat. So we are also receiving a lot of trainees here. And then they're staying for more or less 3 months. And they're working together with us, and they're learning about how we are doing our things, how the processes here look like, and building networks. So a very good opportunity, I think. Another opportunity to meet people from member states and to learn about statistical productions are the training courses. So we offer the opportunity to colleagues from the enlargement countries to participate in the European Statistical Training Program, for example, which is designed for colleagues from the member states. But the colleagues from the enlargement countries can also participate in this training courses. Then another pillar, which is very important, is the participation in Eurostat working groups and expert groups. So these are the groups where all the colleagues in a certain statistical area from the member states are meeting to discuss the most recent developments, methodologies, upcoming initiatives. So everything which is important in a certain statistical area. And here we are inviting the enlargement countries to participate because it's very important for them to be aware of all the development and methodologies from the beginning on. And it's a good opportunity to discuss their questions with the colleagues, to also express their needs, their challenges, and be included in the processes from the very beginning on. Last but not least, we are doing reviews of statistical systems. So for example, we have the peer reviews, which have just been finished in the member states. And now we want to do the same in the enlargement countries. We will start with it next year. And the peer reviews are assessing the compliance of a national statistical system with the so-called code of practice. I will not go into details about the code of practice here because then we need another webinar. But these are the fundamental principles of our institutional environment, our statistical processes, and our how our statistical outputs should be produced. So all these projects, the main aim is, of course, that we are receiving data which are compliant to European standards and requirements. And if we are receiving the data, we also want to publish them. And this we are doing in our our database, which is also called Eurobase. So if the enlargement countries are submitting data to Eurostat, they are assessed in the same way as the data from member state and EFTA countries are assessed. And if they are passing the validation, they are published in the same tables as the data of the member states. The amount of data which is available for the individual countries varies. So while we have quite a lot of data already for some Western Balkans and Turkey countries, the amount of data which is available for the newer enlargement countries, so Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine, is significantly less because, well, they just started to align their statistical production to European standards. But don't worry, we also publish data of these countries, but not within the tables, with the member states. There's a second area where we're publishing them. But this will be explained a bit more in detail by my colleague Mariana later. So we are not only publishing our data in the database, we are also publishing so-called statistics explains articles, where we are using selected data sets to produce some nice infographics. Currently, we have 6 articles about the enlargement countries and 1 key figure article about enlargement countries in our statistics explains articles. So statistics explains articles have the purpose to explain it in an easy way and also illustrate it a bit. I chose 2 infographics from the key figure article to show you a bit of data on the enlargement countries. And the one you can see on the left side is the GDP per capita from 2023. And as you can see here, the highest GDP per capita is in Serbia with 10,500, followed by Turkey, which is close to Serbia. And the GDP per capita in the European Union is around 37,000 euro. But the GDP per capita, to give you a bit more comparability, varies a lot within the European Union. So we have, for example, Luxembourg with the highest GDP per capita, which is around 119,000 euros. And then we have Bulgaria with 15,000 euro, which is already closer to 10,500 of the highest enlargement country, Serbia. The second infographic I chose is the unemployment gender gap of 20 to 64-year-old people. The data from 2022. And the unemployment gender gap analyzes how much higher the unemployment for women is compared to men. And the figures provided are percentage points. So in the European Union, it's with 0.6. It's already quite equally. But as you can see in Bosnia and Herzegovina and also in Turkey, the difference is still much higher. So in Bosnia and Herzegovina, the unemployment for women is 7.4 percentage points higher than for men. But you can also see that we have one country, North Macedonia, which has a negative unemployment gender gap, which means that the unemployment for men is higher than for women. So this was just a very, very short introduction into our data and statistics explains articles. We have much more interesting figures on our websites. And if you are interested in them, so please visit our Statistics Explains articles, our database, also our webpage. So there we have a dedicated section for cooperation where everything which I just explained very briefly is explained in much more detail. But we also have some social media pages. For example, in our Stats in a Web podcast, we have a podcast on how we are cooperating with the enlargement countries. And in LinkedIn, you can see a recent post about our policy group, for example, which happened 2 weeks ago in North Macedonia. So please take a look to all our social medias and websites. Yeah, and this was it from my side. Thank you very much for your attention. And enjoy the next presentation from my colleague.
Thank you, Shari, for your presentation and for showing us how Eurostat is working with the enlargement countries. And actually, I have also a personal question for you. From your side, what is the most fascinating aspect of this job, of this work with the enlargement countries?
I really like the variety of tasks. So we have some very technical statistical tasks, but we also do a lot of project management, and we always have to be very much informed about the political developments in the region. So it's quite interesting that we are doing a lot of different things. but what I enjoy most is the cooperation with all the colleagues. So we are working together with the colleagues from the enlargement countries, which have a different background and are always very super nice, and to feel the enthusiasm of them, but also the colleagues from Eurostat, so people from different countries. And we are cooperating a lot with our technical units here. So yeah, the key element which I really enjoy in my job is also collaboration with the nice people with different cultures and backgrounds.
Thank you for revealing a bit more about your experience. And now we will have the last presentation by Mariana Popova. And with Mariana, we will go into more detail and look at the main aspect of Eurostat's cooperations with the new candidate countries. Mariana, over to you.
Thank you, Romina, and hello, everybody. I'm Mariana Popova, the team leader of statistical cooperation in the European neighbourhood in the Statistical Cooperation Unit of Eurostat. I'm really glad to be here with you and to walk you through the recent developments in official statistics what regards the newest EU candidates, namely Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine. I will start with presenting you the activities that support Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine for the statistical aspects of their EU accession. Then I move to what is already available as data from the three countries, and I will show you where to find it on Eurostat website. And I'll finish with the articles and visualizations on the three countries we have produced in Eurostat. So let's move to the activities which Eurostat has been carrying out to support Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine since the beginning of their EU accession path. Just after the three countries got EU candidate status, Eurostat reacted quickly, inviting them to Eurostat expert groups and high-level meetings, and now their representatives started already participating in numerous Eurostat expert groups, which is very important since it enables the three countries to be up to date with the new practices and requirements for production and dissemination of European statistics in specific statistical domains. We also quickly included Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine in the established data collection rounds for enlargement countries. Thus, now we can supply the so needed indicators for monitoring of progress in EU accession of Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine. And the tangible result of this work, you can see it in the Commission's annual enlargement packages report that Shari informed you about. What we are doing there, we are producing statistical annexes for these reports. So within the EU accession framework, we are also monitoring progress of alignment with, generally speaking, EU regulations and standards, or in EU terms with EU acquis. For Moldova and Ukraine, we are currently assessing the level of compliance with the EU acquis and statistics to know where the two countries stand and what needs to be done in order to fully align with the EU legislation and other established practices. To make association to what you probably already heard from the media, this is the so-called screening, which precedes the actual negotiations with the candidate countries. It is encompassing numerous domains, and as you can see, the statistics is an important part of the exercise. Speaking of important topics, now we go to the core business of statistics, the data, to see what data we already have from Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine. The good news is that Eurostat already has a comprehensive data collection for the three countries. It is a rich database that encompasses many indicators available for the member states and can be used for numerous thematic areas. Currently, there are two data collection modes for the three countries. The first one is data collection as the one for the EU member states, which is based on European methodologies and undergoes validation checks of the Eurostat production units. And the second data collection is the European Neighbourhood East data collection, which has some specificities that I will discuss in the next slides. What concerns the geographical coverage of the data in both data collections, I need to know that there are some limitations due to the complicated geopolitical situation in the European Neighbourhood East region, mainly connected with the relations with Russia. The data collected for Moldova exclude the data for the Transnistrian region, which over the government of Moldova doesn't have control. The same is situation for South Ossetia and Abkhazia in Georgia, and as 2014, data for Ukraine generally exclude the illegally annexed Autonomous Republic of Crimea and the city of Sevastopol, and the territories which are not under the control of the Ukrainian government. Following Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine, data on the country as of the year 2022 is limited due to the martial law the country introduced, which practically abolishes the mandatory data submission by the reporting units to the National Statistical Institute of Ukraine. So let's now have a closer look at the data collection as the one applied for the EU member states. Here, I need to mention that up to now, as non-EU candidates, Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine have been submitting data according to Eurostat procedures applied to the EU member states, only in very few statistical domains, which traditionally collect data from non-EU countries. Namely, these are population, energy, transport, trade statistics. As Shari already showed, these data are published in Eurobase among the data of the member states. Now, with the EU accession process, Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine have started preparation for inclusion in the Eurostat calls for data production, and it is Eurostat key priority to support the three countries in this work, to gradually increase the data collected in the way it is done for the EU member states. Regarding the European Neighbourhood East data collection, it has been put in place in the context of the European Neighbourhood Policy East, and throughout the years, high number of indicators became part of its database. Since Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine became EU candidates just recently, now most of the data for the three countries still come from this data collection. Here we speak about some 840 indicators. As I said in the beginning, it has some specificities, namely, it is based on voluntary data delivery by countries, and unlike Eurostat data production applied for the EU member states, which is based on European methodologies, this data collection includes both European and international methodologies. Also, there are some differences in the data validations performed. Because of these specificities, this data collection is stored in a dedicated place in Eurostat online database, which is called Eurobase, and I'm going now to show where to find it on Eurostat website. Just before this, let me know that our future plans include phasing out of the European Neighbourhood East data collection and its gradual replacement with data produced as the one for the EU member states. This is a complex process which will not happen overnight and will take some time. Therefore, for the coming years, this data collection will be still one of the key sources for indicators on Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine. You can find it if you go to the data tab on Eurostat's website, then database, and after it, general and regional statistics. And under it, you find the non-EU countries domain. And there you have European Neighbourhood South and East. We need to go to European Neighbourhood East for Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine. And there you can see numerous statistical topics such as economy and finance, research and development, population and social conditions, agriculture and fisheries, and other important topics. So you can choose upon your needs. Now let's see what articles and visualization on Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine we have in Statistics Explained that Shari already informed you about. The infographs shown come from an article in Statistics Explained called Key Figures for European Neighbourhood East Countries. That is an overview on main topics for 5 European Neighbourhood Policy East countries, which Moldova, Georgia, and Ukraine are part of. As you can see, the article contains nice infographs, and the data presented in it is compared with data on the EU. The two indicators presented here show the latest available data in Eurostat on the related topics. The first indicator is on the economic developments as depicted by gross domestic product per capita, or GDP per capita, as the indicator is popularly known. Shari already showed you the developments in the Western Balkan countries and Turkey regarding the same indicator. And now I will show you the data for Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine. In 2022, among the 3 new EU candidate countries, Georgia had the highest GDP per capita, ranking second after the leader in the European Neighbourhood East region, Azerbaijan. On the opposite side is Ukraine, where the GDP per capita decreased to 3,700 euros in 2022 from some 4,000 euros in 2021, leaving the country at the bottom of the ranking. Comparing the whole European Neighbourhood East region with EU, one sees the GDP per capita in the EU averaged some 35,000 euros 400 in 2022, which was 5 to 10 times higher than the European Neighbourhood East countries. In 2022, GDP per capita increased compared to 2021, both for the EU and in the European Neighbourhood East countries, with Ukraine the only exception. And regarding the next indicator, behind the rather complicated title, it is about household income inequalities. It is noteworthy that in 2021, Ukraine is well below the European average of household income inequality, which is good news as the indicator goes from 0 to 100, and 0 is the lowest, while 100 is the largest possible income inequality. Another good news is that this is a long-term trend since Ukraine maintained it throughout the period of 2012-2021. And for the same period, the country was also the one with the lowest income inequalities within the whole European neighbourhood policy East region. In 2021, household income inequalities were highest in Georgia. However, there is another good news here, since there was a noticeable reduction as of 2012. As to Moldova, the indicator fluctuated between 2012 and 2021, ranging from some 33 in 2013 to 35.6 in 2021. These developments in time are not visible from the presented infographs. They are described in the article of key figures. There you can find another 3 topics to complete your knowledge. In addition, we have 5 statistics explained articles on the European neighborhood East countries, which include Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine, on various statistical themes such as population, living standards, environment, and research and development. And if you haven't done so, I'm inviting you to consult them. With this, I conclude my presentation. If it raises some questions, I will be happy to answer them in the following question and answer session. We stay in touch via the Eurostat communication channels listed here.
Thank you very much, Mariana, for these insights. And now it's time to move on into the question and answer sessions. And for this session, I'm joined by our colleagues who are ready to take the floor and answer your questions. I would like to remind you about Slido. Again, we are collecting questions through Slido. And I see more questions have been coming in. We will try to answer as many questions as possible. If we don't have time, we will post our reply later in Slido. So let's start. We have a first question for Claudia. Could you share an evaluation of national statistics reliability across the EU?
Thank you for the question. Of course, that's not directly a question on enlargement, but of course we have such mechanisms, and I happen to be the head of unit dealing with that kind of work before coming to the cooperation unit. So we have what we call peer reviews of the members of the European statistical system, and they are reports published on our website. And the reports will give you an impression, a picture on how each statistical system and each ESS member country performs, and not about the quality of each and every statistical data set, but in general how the institutional environment setup is in place to follow, how they follow statistical principles, and what do they do to ensure the quality of their data. So that kind of reviews the reports are available on our website. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia. Then we have a second question. What do the countries have to achieve so that Eurostat can say that they are prepared in the area of statistics to join the EU? And this is for Shari.
Thank you for the question. Yeah, in principle, as I said in my presentation, the countries have to fulfill all the requirements. So they have to produce statistics according to European standards, European concepts, and then they have to submit them to Eurostat according to the deadlines. But to have it a bit more measurable in the chapters, so chapter 18 statistics, we have so-called closing benchmarks. And the closing benchmarks for the countries which already started the negotiations are mainly in the area of national accounts. And national accounts, they were picked because national accounts are very important for the physical policies of the European Union, but also national accounts are using a lot of other statistics as input. So for example, census results, business statistics. So it means as soon as they're submitting national accounts data which are compliant to European standards, also the other statistics have to be in place. So to summarize, to close a chapter, they have to fulfill the closing benchmarks, but all the other statistics also have to meet the European requirements, and these we are monitoring on a regular basis for all the statistical areas.
Thank you very much, Shari. The next question is again for Claudia. Why can I not find the same amount of data for the enlargement countries as for the member states? Will there be more data available?
That's a very good question. Of course, we try to get the same kind of data from the enlargement countries as from the EU member states, but we also have to acknowledge it's a longer term process. It requires the reforms in their national statistical system. It requires quite some resources to produce these data. And that's why we have started on a very low level, but we are getting increasing number of data sets from those countries. And at some time, latest when the countries join the European Union, we will have the same data available. But the main reason is that this is a process and it needs resources and time. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia. Let's go on. We have another question. When we expect the countries to fully meet the criteria for compliance with EU standards in statistics? Mariana, do you want to help us on this?
Yes, thank you, Romina. Actually, this depends really on the country. All the countries are progressing with different speed, and it depends on many factors. So it's really a mixture of a lot of factors. And here we cannot even miss the political situation in the country. So what is really very, very stable here is that the European Commission and Eurostat are here to help and work with these countries to fastest possible alignment with the EU standards.
Thank you, Mariana. We have another question for Claudia. Do you have statistics on corruption and European money fraud from the European Public Prosecutor's Office or other sources already?
Again, an interesting question, and that the answer here is not so straightforward because we are, of course, Eurostat and we produce a lot of data for the EU member states, but we still have a bit of a differentiation what kind of statistics is in our responsibility. And we call it European or official statistics. And that's the statistics that are legislated. So we have a regulation on methodology, on the concepts, definitions, and how the countries have to transmit the data. But statistics on corruption are not yet part of this big pot of official European statistics. Because there's a lot of data outside also in the EU member states, which we call administrative data. The Ministry of Education collects some data that it needs to monitor its policies, the same for the Ministry of Health. And not all of those statistics are official statistics, so including statistics on corruption are not yet part of official statistics, and that's why we do not collect the data and we don't have them available. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia. And the next question is for Shari. Are the countries implementing the recommendations given in the reviews of their statistical system?
Yes, they do. So as the peer reviews, when the peer reviews teams are going to the countries, they give some recommendations. And after the recommendations, the countries have to draft improvement actions. And these improvement actions use that, how they are implementing them, we are monitoring on a regular basis. And since I just gave a presentation on it during our policy group meeting 2 weeks ago, I can tell you that we are around 80% of implementation of the implementation actions. And the ones which are not yet implemented are, for example, things like changing the statistical law, which can take a long time, or where other players outside the national statistical institutes are included. So yes, the basic answer is they are really trying to implement the improvement actions, and they're doing quite well.
Thank you very much, Shari. Let's go on. So the next question is, how prepared are the countries in the area of statistics? And I think this is for you, Mariana.
As I said, they're progressing with different speeds. But what is really the good news here is that all of the countries are progressing. And here we need to take into account that the statistic is not a constanta. It is something which is dynamic and it is developing all the time. There are all the time new policy needs and the new production of indicators connected to them. So even the member states, they have to progress all the time. So it's a continuous process.
Thank you, Mariana. The next question is for Claudia. What are the biggest challenges for these countries to produce the same data as the member states? And what are the most significant challenges that Eurostat faces when collaborating with the candidate countries to align their systems to our standards?
I think for the countries, the biggest, or one of the biggest challenges, I think there are some, not only one, but one of the biggest challenges is that the countries are small, and it means the national statistical institutes are also small. So compare a statistical office in Montenegro with a population of around 600,000 people, and in the office you have around 120 people. With Germany with 83 million people, and the statistical office has more than 2,000 employees, but they still have to produce almost the same statistics. So resources, human resources is a big challenge, and also financial resources. But the other challenge, and that's a bit similar even like for the member states, is that the EU regulation, the EU acquis in statistics is constantly developing. It's like running after somebody who is always ahead of you. So you implement the 10 regulations you had in mind, and in the meantime, there are another 3 or 4 regulations that you have to start on that. And the third challenge is that it also takes a lot of time. If we want to have comparable data, we need to have legislation. We need to agree what is the definition of a certain concept, for example, population. Whom do we count in the population? Whom do we not count, so that we have comparable figures at the level of the European Union? And to agree on all that, you need some time. Then in statistics, if you want to have a legislation, a regulation, you need to go through the procedures with the European Parliament and the European Council. That takes another 2 or 3 years. And then when you finally have a regulation, then you need also some 2 or 3 years to implement it. So that's another challenge, that the needs of the users may be immediate, but the data that they would like to see come later or less fast than we would like to. But we are also working on that to increase this timeliness. And for Eurostat, the challenge is, of course, also a bit related to resources, because we are around 800 people and we are supposed to deal with the data from the 31 members of the ESS. That includes the EU and Liechtenstein, Iceland, Norway, and Switzerland. So if there's if there are new data sets, more data sets coming from the 10 current enlargement countries, we also need to become more efficient. There's also a need to look in more detail into their used methodology, into their metadata, the data that describe the data, so we can assess are the data really of good quality. So it's also a question of workload and resources. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia. And actually, there's another question which I think you could answer. What is the impact of enlargement on the statistical landscape within the EU, and how does Eurostat manage indeed this increase in data complexity?
Yes, it's very linked to the previous
Exactly.
answer. Yes, I think the impact is that at the end we will have to publish tables not with 27 plus 4 for EFTA countries, but 27 plus 4 plus maybe another 10. So that becomes larger and more data to process, more data to validate, more countries to work with. For example, in these expert group meetings, it is already not easy if you have 31 countries sitting in front of you and you want to agree on, as I said, on a definition, on a concept, on the methodology. You have 31 different opinions. So if the 10 countries join, we will have 41 different opinions. So that's a process we need to manage. And of course, we also will need more resources if 10 countries are joining, in terms of human resources, people dealing with the data, but also in terms of financial resources, because even when countries become a member state, Eurostat is still supporting them, even the member states, financially to produce new statistics. So these are the challenges or the impact that enlargement may have on Eurostat. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia. We still have some time for other questions. Do you make projections regarding possible future enlargement, for instance, regarding movement of workers? And I think Mariana can help us on this question.
Yes, actually, no, we are not doing projections, but the data which we are producing could be used for these projections. So the policymakers, for example, are using this data for such type of projections when needed.
Thank you. The next question is, will Georgia, Moldova and Ukraine be covered with the annual progress report to be published in November 2024? And this is again for you, Mariana.
And again, the answer is yes. I just need to say here that they were already covered in the previous year report. And as I said in my presentation, this is also due to our common efforts with the three countries to produce data which could be used for monitoring in their progress in these reports. So this is a joint achievement of Eurostat and these three countries and their statistical institutes to have data in these reports.
Thank you, Mariana. Claudia, another question for you. I would like to ask, how does the future of the European Union look like? Thank you.
Oh, that's a very political question. I have, of course, my personal opinion on that, but working also for the European Commission, for the European Union, I'm always a fan that we have a bright future, but I think we cannot really answer that question. It's not in our area of competence.
And then a question for Shari. How can the national statistical institutes of the EU member states support the candidate countries' national statistical offices to align faster their systems with the EU requirements?
Yeah, I think this is basically what I presented on one slide of my presentation. So we are having quite a few supporting programs for the individual regions. And within these programs, we have different elements. So for example, sending experts to the countries. But a very important instrument is also that they're joining our working groups so that they're on the core of the discussions for new methodologies and things like that. So I think all the support programs we have are assisting the countries to achieve exactly this. So this is support we are already giving to them.
Thank you, Shari. We still have some questions. Do you notice trends in which categories of data enlargement countries are more hesitant to submit, and why do you think that that is? Claudia, would you like to help us a bit on this?
I think there are some areas, let's put it this way, where I think the countries are a bit more hesitant. Maybe hesitant is not the right word, where it's very difficult for them to send data. And that's in the area of macroeconomic statistics and also government finance statistics. And it's, as I said, they are not really hesitant, but they are very complex statistical domains. And you need to, for example, for government finance statistics, you need also data sources from the Ministry of Finance. Financing of the government is always maybe a hot potato. So you have to, not to fight, but to work with those other institutions in the country to get those data, then to produce the statistical product, the government finance statistics. But overall, I would say countries are not hesitant to send data. Sometimes it's a bit more difficult and it requires more work, more time, more resources to do so. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have another question coming in. So how is Eurostat incorporating new technologies such as big data or AI in its cooperation with candidate countries and statistical processes? And this is for Mariana.
Here I can give actually an example, not with Eurostat work, but with one of the candidate countries, Albania, which was pioneering in using AI in the cooperation work. Actually, for example, in the Albanian case, they're translating the EU acquis via the AI translation tools. So this is one very concrete example of the use of AI in statistical cooperation and exactly in the EU accession process. And here in Eurostat, we are really forward-looking for adopting as many as possible technologies which are coming, and this is a question of very near future.
So I think we can take one more question before we wrap up regarding the data collection that is applied for the EU member states. Which upcoming statistics domains will be in focus for candidate countries? Who wants to help us with this question?
I can take it then. I think first we have to say that the candidate countries, of course, have to comply with the EU legislation in all the domains. But for some domains, I think the needs for the data is very high right from the beginning of the process. And these are, for example, all the data related to macroeconomic statistics, national accounts, prices, so inflation rates, the unemployment rate, trade statistics because they are part of trade agreements, statistics that are about phenomena that are crossing borders, so like anything transport, energy, pollution. So then for those countries that are now candidate countries, I think in each of them agriculture plays a big role as an economic sector in the country, so also statistics on that one is very needed. We could probably continue this list and then we will end up with all the acquis, but we are focusing maybe on those areas in the first place, but not leaving the other parts out. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Claudia. So with no more questions to answer, I will start to wrap up. Thank you very much, everybody, for your questions. It has been a very interesting session. Thanks, Claudia, Shari, and Mariana for taking us through this. And thank you all for having participated and for your questions. I would like to remind you that you will find in Slido a short user survey where you can tell us how much you liked our webinar and give us some feedback. And if some more questions come up to your mind, feel free to contact our multilingual user support. My colleagues will post the address in Slido. As I said, this session has been recorded and we will put the recording up in Facebook, on LinkedIn, and on our website. And as I said, we are celebrating European Statistics Day with different activities planned around the 20th of October. We have new publications, infographics, animations, and a quiz-based competitions with prizes running over our social media. My colleagues will post some more information on Statistics Day in Slido. And next appointment is tomorrow with our new podcast episode on Eurostat data users. And there we will explore how people use and rely on Eurostat data in their daily work. Otherwise, I would like to end by saying again a big thanks to our speakers and all of you for having participated, and I wish you a good rest of the day.